This is Super Successful Man. He can achieve success in anything he wants. He can earn as much money as he wants. He can accomplish anything he puts his mind to because of his superpower. But what is his superpower? Well, let me tell you a story. This is George. George is a taxi driver. It pays the bills, but he's not happy in his job. Long hours, rude customers, and an inner feeling that he's not fulfilling his potential have all left him unhappy and unsatisfied. His passion is in writing. In fact, that's what George would love to do for a living. His dream is to become an author and earn money doing what he loves. George's unhappiness in his job sometimes spills over into his home life. Sometimes he can be irritable and get into arguments with his wife or shout at his kids even. His mood has been even more negative lately because he's been watching a lot of news on the TV. In fact, he does that most evenings after finishing work. The stories are never positive, so each time he watches it, it makes him either sad or angry. He'd find himself worried about potential future disasters or generally fearful about crime. As a distraction from his increasingly bad moods, his troubled family relationships, and his general dissatisfaction with work, George has also been spending a lot of time playing video games, watching TV, and scrolling through social media. This is a real low point in George's life, seemingly rudderless with no direction. One day, in his taxi, George found himself without a customer and decided to turn on a podcast. Turn Your Life Around by Doing This One Thing, it was called. George was feeling pretty low at this point, so he decided to give it a chance and listen. To his amazement, the podcast really struck a chord with him and spoke to each of the areas of his life that he was struggling with. The host went on and explained that changing your life for the better can be accomplished by concentrating on one thing. And that one thing is focus on where you place it. The host continued, "What you focus on grows. This is because when we focus on something, it grows in our consciousness, which makes it occupy more space in our minds as we think more and more about it. This is all good if we focus on empowering things because those things will grow. But if we focus on disempowering things, they will also increase in size in our minds and our lives." The host explained that by focusing on something, you're sending your energy to that something. And when we do this with laser focus and eliminate distractions, we can achieve unbelievable success. However, when we focus on what we don't want or on negative things, it can leave us miserable and directionless. The host then asked the podcast audience this question: are you sending your focus and valuable energy towards the negative aspects of your life? Wow, George felt the host was talking directly to him. He sat there in his taxi and thought about it. He'd been constantly focusing on how much he hated his job. He used to have goals about being an author and writing books, but he hadn't even thought about that lately. In fact, he hadn't written anything in years. He now wondered, what else had he been focusing on? Yep, the news. A lot of his focus at home was spent on consuming the news. Most of those stories were negative. The news just made him feel bad about the world and put him into an even worse mood than he already was. And what about his family? Rather than being happy that he had a loving family, he would only focus on the things they did that annoyed him, and he would yell at them for it. Worse still, he would argue with them and then place his focus away from them into gaming, social media, or the TV. Having reflected on all that, George now felt remorseful and ashamed. He was letting his loved ones down and not fulfilling his own potential due to misplacing his focus. After listening to that podcast, George now realized he had to realign his focus in all aspects of his life. To begin with, he reignited his interest in writing. He'd always wanted to learn ways to improve his writing, so he signed up for an online writing course and worked through it in the evenings or whenever he had spare time. During the day, between taxi fares, he would listen to podcasts on book writing. Focusing on his self-growth and education like this really lifted his mood now. So he started that book he always wanted to write. He focused on writing every morning before work. He time-blocked an hour every morning that was just for his writing so he could ensure that he was always taking action and moving towards his goal of completing his book. This gave George a real sense of purpose. George also realigned his focus towards happiness and gratitude. He began to focus on the little things that he was grateful for: dinner with his family, walking to school with his children. And when he was with his family, he'd focus his attention only on them, as opposed to being preoccupied thinking about work like he used to. Focusing on gratitude like this made George happier because he was focused on the good things in life and not the bad things. And finally, George avoided distractions. He wanted success as an author and healthy relationships with his loved ones, so he refused to let his focus drift to distractions. Yes, he still occasionally watched TV and browsed social media, but never at the expense of his goals or his family. George continued in this way for the months and the years that followed. It became his new way of being, to focus only on the things that empowered him and improved his life. His newfound command of his focus brought him great success. He wrote hugely successful books, earning him more money than he'd ever earned before, all while doing something he loved. This allowed him to leave his job as a taxi driver, and he became so much happier around his family that his relationships blossomed. His family loved the new George. Meanwhile, as the sun sets on a summer evening, super successful man stands guard watching over the city. His success is unrivaled. He's able to succeed where no other human can, and he can do this because of his superpower, the power of focus. And that's how George thinks about himself when he gets to work writing every morning now. He feels that he discovered his superpower on that day in the taxi listening to the podcast. That is what had helped him turn his life around and achieve his massive success. Focusing on self-growth, gratitude, his family, and taking action towards his goals has propelled him to great wealth, increased his happiness, and left him leading a life with purpose and meaning. Remember, what you focus on grows. Make sure your focus is aimed at growing what you want, not growing what you don't want. If you like our videos, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. And while you're down there, make sure you subscribe so you can watch our future videos as we release them. And if you've got any suggestions for future videos, please leave them in the comments below.